It's been said before, but did you ever stop to consider how insane it is that Kyle Rittenhouse shot 3 individuals, all of them strangers to one another, and all 3 of them happened to have a criminal history, with one of them even being a sex offender? Like, what are the odds of 3 strangers with crazy, perverted, independent criminal histories being together like that on the street? Well, it seems like that's an insane amount of creeps and criminals to be gathered in a small area all at the same time, until you remember that, oh yeah, Kyle was defending Kenosha against a left-wing mob that had been radicalized by the mainstream media. Of course, that riot was littered with weirdos. Of course it was. Most things involving leftists tend to attract a pretty nasty crowd. Take, for example, this week's arrest of Oran Routh, the son of the would-be Trump shooter Ryan Routh. Oran was arrested on Tuesday after police searched his Greensboro, North Carolina home that was, quote, in connection with an investigation unrelated to child exploitation, presumably his father's attempted assassination attempt of Trump, and, quote, found hundreds of files depicting child sexual abuse, an FBI agent said in court papers. The beyond disgusting, unspeakably evil. According to Blaze Media, investigators said the images were found on a Samsung Galaxy Note device in the man's primary bedroom, as well as another Galaxy Note device. Prosecutors say they were able to obtain evidence of a conversation in which Oran Routh, the son of Ryan Routh, sought to purchase child pornography. It's really an odd twist in this saga that nobody saw coming. Oran, you should remember, was quoted by the mainstream media and was the go-to guy to give a character assessment of his father for the press after that attempted assassination. Remember what he said about his father? Well, he said his dad was a hard worker who hated President Trump like, quote, every reasonable person does, while also adding, quote, I don't like Trump either. He then went on a tangent about the state of the U.S. politics, and he quoted South Park or something. In other words, the son sounded just like his father, who sounded like an indoctrinated leftist activist, who sounded exactly like the talking heads in the mainstream media. Well, if it turns out that these allegations are true, and they sound true, the son is also an evil pervert. Which, again, maybe isn't all that surprising. It seems clear that he and his dad are radical leftists. Radicalized people who follow any extreme ideology have a disordered view of the world. Having a disordered worldview leads to disordered actions, which leads to disordered behavior that normal, clear-headed people find repulsive and grotesque, such as attempting an assassination attempt or having child pornography on your computer. Now, some have speculated that maybe the FBI or the deep state planted this material on Oran's computer. And that sort of questioning, the refusal to accept the narrative, that's a good thing. We shouldn't just believe the authorities automatically. We know for a fact that the Department of Justice lies for political and self-protecting purposes all the time. But that doesn't seem to pass the smell test here, and here's why. For starters, why would the Department of Justice want to do that? His dad already confessed to the crime via a letter and by offering people a bounty if they successfully kill President Trump. It's not like the son would need to be flipped to extract a confession, and this is the way the Department of Justice would try to coerce him into doing that. No. And while Oran arguably seemed to be at least supportive of his dad's actions, maybe sympathetic is a better word, he did reference his father as a martyr, after all, which has positive connotations of dying for the cause. We have no evidence, at least at this point, that Oran was actively involved with the assassination attempt. Reportedly, the Rouths, father and son, were estranged from each other. Plus, had Oran been connected to the assassination, he likely would have been arrested already after the feds raided his father's house. And listen, they say a book shouldn't be judged by its cover, but look at this guy. Would you let him near your kids? Probably not. And often, yeah, you actually can judge a book by its cover. So what does deserve questioning is whether or not Ryan Routh had any help whatsoever from outside sources. Was he coaxed by foreign adversaries to try to assassinate President Trump? Maybe by Iran, perhaps, who has active teams seeking to assassinate Trump, according to the Director of National Intelligence. Was Ryan Routh really just deranged enough to believe he was fighting for democracy, spurred on by mainstream media that lies, Democrats that unleash untrue rhetoric against President Trump every day? What exactly was Ryan Routh doing in Ukraine when he spent all that time there? And how had he been arrested so many times, reportedly 74 times with little to no jail time, including after he was charged with possession of a weapon of mass destruction? Those are questions that demand answers. And we will keep demanding them. But as for the sun, if you dabble in evil ideology, evil leftist ideology, it will invariably lead you to evil of the most twisted kind.